The Blazing Saddles set had an event in 1974 that no one talks about. After one day, the character who played the Waco Kid was no longer there. After 4 years, what he did still makes people in Hollywood scared. After reading the plot, John Wayne said 3 words that made everything different. Warner Brothers hid the fact that the original title had something to do with Malcolm X, and the name of the governor has a secret meaning that only French scholars know how to explain. These aren't just facts about movies. They tried to hide these stories for 50 years. A crazy idea led to the start of Blazing Saddles. As a clear nod to Malcolm X, it was first called Tex X. Andrew Bergman was in his 20s when he made it. He wanted to write a story about a black sheriff in a western town where everyone is white. That thought was explosive on its own. It wasn't a joke to name the sheriff after Malcolm X. It was a sentence. He was out to destroy the perfect whitewashed idea of Hollywood cowboys. The Old West was run by a black man? That turned the whole genre on its head. It was even stranger that in the early 1970s, a big studio gave this script a lot of thought. Back then, movies didn't deal with race in that way, and comedies didn't do it either. Even though the name Tex X was changed, that fire stayed in the finished version of Blazing Saddles. The movie almost went in a totally different way before Mel Brooks came along. Alan Arkin was going to direct, and James Earl Jones was going to play the sheriff. He did this a long time before he became Darth Vader's voice. Jones was strong and deep, but not a history of being funny. He was still a good choice, but the project failed. There were disagreements about ideas, leaders who were tense, and the blunt force of the script scared everyone. It was too risky and brave, so it was put on a shelf. The story came back to life when Mel Brooks joined it. He didn't make it less strong. Instead, he made it stronger. Without that earlier loss, there would be no such thing as Blazing Saddles. It wasn't going well for Mel Brooks when he took the job. They got him an Oscar, but it didn't make them much money. The 12 Chairs, his next movie, did not do well at all. He had no money. He had no money to buy a new car. A child was going to be born to him and Anne Bancroft. He was ready to give up and watch TV again. He turned down the offer of Tex X because he had faith in himself. He grabbed it because he had to. Brooks later said that this movie saved him. He was able to buy a house, eat a good dinner, and finally breathe again. His whole life changed when he met Blazing Saddles. It was a mess writing the story. Brooks worked with other people. He got Andrew Bergman, Richard Pryor, Norman Steinberg, and Alan Uyghur to write for him as well. It was like a bar fight in the writing room. People yelled, argued, and fought so that their jokes would stay alive. The sessions went on late into the night. They were fed on adrenaline and Chinese food every day. It took 412 pages to write the first draft. That's nearly 8 hours of film. They cut it down to 275 pages, which is still way too long but full of crazy, off-the-wall jokes. Pryor gave the story his sharp edge, especially when it comes to Mongo. No one could even recall what they wrote by who. The fart show by the campfire? That came from all this chaos? It wasn't writing, there was war. It turned out to be something Hollywood had never seen before. Brooks set the mood right away with a sign on the wall. It said, "Please don't write a polite script." Everything was changed by that sign. He told his group to ignore all the rules. There were no rules. His way of thinking was easy. We know they won't make it, so let's have fun. They did it. They made fun of Hollywood cliches, spoke out against racism, and joked about things that no one else would. Pryor wrote jokes about Jews. Black jokes were written by Jewish people. No one stayed in their lane. This mix gave the movie its brave voice. It wasn't just a jab at Western styles. It broke them up and made something new out of the pieces. It was planned that Richard Pryor would be the star. But Warner Brothers said no to Brooks's first choice for Sheriff Bart. It was said that Pryor's drug problems and recent time in jail made him uninsurable. Brooks was very angry. He thought about going outside. He almost lost his temper, but Pryor told him not to. He said, "We'll find the right guy. Do not stop." Pryor did not go away, though. He joined the writing team and helped set the tone of the movie without being seen. Cleveland Little got the main part. Brooks said afterward that Little was a lucky catch. You have to wonder what Pryor's performance would have been like, though, since he and Gene Wilder became famous as a comedy team only 2 years later. The hugest surprise of all then came. John Wayne was to play the Waco Kid for Mel Brooks. Yes, the John Wayne. There was no doubt that he was a world star. Brooks gave it to him. Wayne said he laughed so hard while reading it the night before. He said no, though. He said it looked bad on him because it was dirty, but he said he'd be the first one there to see it. Think about it. The most serious and upright cowboy of all time plays a drunk jerk in a movie that makes fun of his whole genre. It almost happened, but it didn't. After Wayne said no, Brooks couldn't stop thinking about how to cast Dan Dailey. Dailey wasn't from the West. He was famous for shows, but he was also a great horse rider. Brooks thought he was great. He even found him in Hawaii. Dailey also liked the story, but turned it down. His eyes were getting worse. He said that he was almost blind and could no longer ride properly. Brooks was crushed. He never found the right talent, but fate had other ideas. Then there was the worst casting mistake ever. Brooks hired Gig Young. Young had a drinking problem, but he had won an Oscar and looked tired, which was what Brooks wanted. During the jail cell scene on the first day of shooting, he began to shake. Brooks thought that he was staged. He was taken to the hospital right away because green bile was coming out of his mouth. After the fact, Brooks said, "If you want an alcoholic, don't cast an alcoholic." Young didn't come back. He later went after Warner Brothers. Once more, the movie had lost its Waco Kid. Gene Wilder stepped in at that point. Brooks hadn't thought about him as the Waco Kid. He believed Wilder was too new and young. He had earlier offered Wilder the part of the bad guy, but Wilder turned it down. Now, Brooks called him crying. The last thing Wilder did with Brooks was work on the producers. He took a plane and went straight to Los Angeles. The outfit fit him perfectly when he tried it on. He was already on set that Monday. The Waco Kid was memorable because of his quiet charm and strange sense of time. And the way he worked with Cleveland Little made the movie what it was. That last-minute choice saved the day in the middle of all the chaos. It was terrible when Mel Brooks showed Blazing Saddles to the top people at Warner Brothers for the first time. It was quiet in the room. No one in the company smiled. There were a lot of fart jokes, a scene where a horse was punched, and the N-word was used without question. Instead of laughing, there was first discomfort and then anger. Leo Greenfield, who is in charge of domestic distribution for the company, told them straight out that they should lose money and not show the movie. Some others agreed. They didn't just dislike the show. They wanted it to go away. They made Brooks take a lot of cuts, take out the scene at the campfire, the fighting, and the racial slurs. While listening, Brooks took the list, left the room, and then rolled it up into a ball and threw it away. He wasn't going to change anything. Brooks knew he only had one chance. He quickly set up a second screening for the workers, like secretaries and janitors, instead of the suits, and mailroom workers. And this time, the room blew up. People couldn't stop laughing after the first joke. Some of them even fell out of their chairs because they were so out of breath. In the best way, it was complete chaos. Norman Steinberg, one of the co-writers, remembers the event very well. He said that people were rolling around on the ground. Brooks said how he really felt as he watched it all happen. Fight them. This is our movie. Business leaders at the studio saw something that night that they couldn't ignore. The real people who watched it loved it. And that's what kept the movie from being forgotten. The studio was still scared after that crazy reaction. They didn't want to risk a release across the whole country, so they played it safe. This movie would only be shown in 3 towns. It's in New York, Los Angeles, and Chicago. That's it. There was no promotion, buzz, or previews from critics. Just cold releases to see what happened. People in these places were picked because they were more likely to find the humor funny, especially Brooks's Jewish Catskills jokes. The company hoped for small profits, maybe just enough to keep their cool. Instead, they got rooms full of people who were laughing so hard they could not breathe. And talk that spread like flames. The coin had come up heads, and the fire was just beginning. Some people didn't know how to feel about it. Some people really liked it. Some people thought it was rude and insulting. That didn't matter, though. People kept coming to the shows. The movie was shown in both big cities and small places by the spring of 1974. The company had been expecting quiet in suburban theaters, but all of a sudden, giving up. Some people watched more than just Blazing Saddles. They talked about it, quoted it, and fought about it. There were lines all around the block. Nights were made out of family and friends. What began as a quirky comedy became a huge hit across the country. Even the bad reviews had to agree. A lot of people were screaming. Nobody thought those scenes would ever get past the censors, but they did. The movie broke all the rules. The money then came. It cost only $2.6 million to make. But how much did it make in North America? $119.6 million. That made it the best movie of 1974. About 63 million people went to the cinemas to see it. That was more than any later Lord of the Rings movie did. Blazing Saddles made almost $600 million after taking inflation into account. It wasn't just a bonus, it was a big deal. Mel Brooks went with his gut, didn't listen to the bosses, and made the movie he really wanted to make. It worked. The movie didn't just make it, it changed the rules for what a sitcom could be. There was a lot of meaning in every little thing in Blazing Saddles. Write down the name of the governor, William J. Lepetomaine. It doesn't make sense. Truth be told, it's a reference to a real French performer called Joseph Pujol. He was born in 1857 and became famous all over the world as Le Pétomane, which means the fart maniac. That wasn't just a name for his act. It was it. He was able to breathe air or even water into his rectum and let it out whenever he wanted, right on time. As an impressionist, he played music, blew out candles, and he could even smoke a cigarette on his behind. Because Pujol was so well known, nurses had to be stationed at his shows in case someone passed out from laughing too hard. Someone is said to have died smiling once, and he made more money than France's most famous actress. Brooks didn't just do it for fun when he named the governor after him. It was an honor to a legendary body comedian who used to run the Moulin Rouge. Brooks didn't end there. He played more than one role. He also played a Native American chief who spoke Yiddish very well. There is a scene in the movie where the chief lets a wagon full of black farmers go by without hurting them. He then tells a joke that breaks every Hollywood Western trope. He tells you in Yiddish, "Don't go crazy, let him go. They're darker than us, but they don't mind as long as you're fit." It was silly, it hurt my feelings, and they did it on purpose. In the past, Jewish actors often played native parts. As Brooks turned the joke on its head, it was only clear to people who know a lot about both Jewish society and the history of Hollywood casting. Brooks did a lot more than just act. You'd never guess where he added his voice. The singers who are behind Lily Von Stupp? That's him. The random person who yelled during the final fight? He too. He hidden little versions of himself in the music, making it sound like he was there. It was funny all the way through. There are jokes in every scene. Every sound was made to be as silly as possible. He got even more into it if something broke the rules of storytelling. The film's intentional use of out-of-date ideas is the best example of that. The story takes place in the Old West, but all of a sudden, the Count Basie Orchestra plays the 1930s song April in Paris. A cowboy talks about a sports show on TV that didn't exist yet. As the final fight goes from a Hollywood set to a musical and back to a cafeteria, the fourth wall is broken completely. It's not a mistake, it's clear. "You should know that this wasn't a Western," Brooks said. "It was a comedy that looked like a Western. People loved how it broke rules about time, space, genre, and logic. After that, there's a moment when nothing seems possible. Count Basie and his full jazz group show up out of nowhere about 20 minutes into the movie. The scene takes place in a dusty desert in 1874. The guys are dressed to the nines and playing April in Paris, like it's a music hall instead of the Wild West. The strange part is here. In 1874, there was no such thing as jazz. Jazz wouldn't come along for another 20 years after ragtime. Still, they're playing out in the desert like it's nothing out of the ordinary. The scene is shocking and funny, and not at all where it should be. That's the point. Mel Brooks, who directed the movie, wasn't trying to be historically correct. He broke the rules and wanted to shock the crowd. This wasn't just a short piece of music. It went on for a while and completely cut off the Western plot. But somehow, it made things better instead of worse. It became one of the most famous parts of the movie and showed how much Brooks enjoyed making people laugh at silly things, and the way he likes to turn movie standards on their heads. Basie didn't just play any version of the song either. His famous 1955 plan for April in Paris came together. It had big brass, smooth swing, and Basie's famous piano beat. That was the first time he recorded it in 1955. It became a signature part of his live shows. At the 1956 Newport Jazz Festival, one of the most famous acts took place. This event is still seen as a turning point in jazz history. Brooks added another level of meaning by using that exact form. He didn't just want any old jazz song, he picked one with a lot of history. It was an honor to Basie's memory and a funny way to mix real-life music history. The scene was already strange, but Basie wasn't even playing a part. He played himself. A real jazz great just walked into a fake Western set in the 1800s. That choice made everything seem even stranger and smarter. The crazy setting made Basie's cool and calm attitude stand out even more, which made the joke even funnier. He did not look lost. He seemed to fit in, which made the whole thing funny. A well-known singer rarely takes part in a scene like that, especially when they're not trying to steal the show, but that was the beauty. Dreams and reality came together in Brooks's music, and Basie jumped right in. This wasn't just crazy behavior. The rules of Western movies were being broken by Brooks. Western movies from the past, especially those released before 1974, had serious guys, dusty towns, and exciting gunfights. They didn't have much fun with the setup. Brooks didn't care about following the rules, though. He wanted to break it, and the jazz scene was the best way for him to do it. Some scholars even think it was a bold move to put a black jazz group in a Western setting that is usually white and heavy on other genres. It challenged old ideas and told people that culture doesn't happen in neat timelines. There are some really funny ways that it changes, crosses, and sometimes crashes into itself. Blazing Saddles has another secret that most people don't know about. Anne Bancroft, the Oscar-winning actor and Mel Brooks's wife, showed up in the movie, but no one paid attention. She didn't want any attention, even though she was one of only 24 artists to ever win the Oscar, the Emmy, and the Tony. She quietly walked into the church scene as an extra. There wasn't a special close-up, shout-out, or big announcement. She didn't stand out. It wasn't a PR stunt or a joke between people in the know. It was a simple, quiet nod to the project that her husband had worked hard on. The appearance turned into a cute Easter egg that not even fans often find. It also showed how Bancroft and Brooks, who were married for 41 years, were very close and loved each other. Something strange did happen, though, even with all that proof. Big movie sites like IMDb wouldn't show Bancroft's part in the movie. Fans sent in photos. Historians agreed with it. Brooks even talked about it. The databases still wouldn't change the record. Not a real award. Movie fans made this small mistake into a small mystery. It wasn't fixed, even though many people tried. Some said it was because of strict rules about uncredited parts. Some people thought the cameo was not important enough, but for many fans, the part that wasn't shown became part of the story. It showed that even the most popular actors can be erased from history if they want to blend in with the background. It's not always quiet when Blazing Saddles talks about what goes on behind the scenes. Madeline Kahn's first tryout for the part of Lily Von Stupp was a complete mess. She stopped moving when Mel Brooks asked to see her legs. She thought it was one of those interviews that women are taught to leave right away. She snapped, "So, it's that kind of an audition." Brooks quickly explained himself because he was scared. He was interested in whether she could do a dramatic chair straddle like Marlene Dietrich did in Destry Rides Again. That was it. There is no sleaze, just study. Kahn got it right away. She picked up a chair, lifted her skirt, and hit the pose perfectly. That was it. She got the part right away. That was it. Her beauty, guts, and funny timing sealed the deal. It was that one moment that got them noticed for an Oscar and made her one of the biggest stars in the movie, but she didn't stop there. She looked Brooks straight in the eye after the test, lifted her skirt again, and told him not to touch her. The line wasn't written down. It wasn't planned. It was great when it first came out. People on set talked about that quick line for years. It wasn't just amusing. It made the character's whole mood. Kahn wasn't just imitating someone else.